Hey everyone, my name is REDRUP. This is the It's Not a Phase podcast. On this episode, I'm joined by Mayday Parade vocalist Derek Sanders. The band are celebrating their 20th anniversary this year, so we dive into some highlights from the past 2 decades, their brand new record Sweet, the forthcoming trilogy of releases that it will be a part of, and loads more. But just before we dive into all of that, I would really appreciate it if you could take a few seconds of your time right now to support the podcast. You can hit subscribe or follow wherever you're checking this out, and that way you also don't miss out on any future episodes. You can leave a review or a comment. You can give the podcast a follow on social media, and there's also a Patreon and there's a web store if you did want to go one step further. I've made things as easy as possible for you by shoving links to everything that I've just mentioned in the description of this episode, or you can head to itsnotaphase.co.uk. And now, with all of that out of the way, here's my chat with Derek Sanders of Mayday Parade. What's up everybody? Thank you for joining me on this episode of the It's Not a Phase podcast, where I'm joined by Derek of Mayday Parade. How's it going, dude?
Oh, it's going so well, man. Life is good. How about you?
Yeah, all good, man. All good. Yeah, we'll obviously dive into it a bit more, but 20 years of Mayday Parade, wow, that's gone quick, man.
Yeah, it sure has. It's pretty insane, and I feel like I keep saying this, but like it snuck up on me in a way that I wasn't expecting. Because I feel like we've kind of known, obviously for a few years, like, oh, but 20 years coming up,
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden it's just right here, and it's like, whoa, like, and kind of realizing that we need to, do things to celebrate it. And a lot of what we're doing wasn't planned originally. Like this was just going to be a tour,
right.
and we were going to just put out an album, and then we were like, wait a second, like this is all happening in 2025, in the 20-year anniversary. So we need to so that kind of gave us the idea to do the 3-part release and to, theme the tour as kind of a celebration. And I was like, how did we not like plan this better, But
Yeah.
it's just weird the way it like all of a sudden it's here, but it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like just like you say, it's kind of crept on upon you and your plans just kind of like evolved into something much grander, which is, a good way to celebrate it. Like the bigger the celebration, the better, right?
Yeah, for sure. It feels right and it feels appropriate. And what's really wild about all of it is that this also was unexpected to me. Is that I feel like I had never really stopped and looked back at the last 20 years in a way that I have, for doing this tour. I've gone back and looked at like some of the earliest interviews I could find of the band, and we're kind of putting some stuff together and the earliest live footage and sets and all that. And I feel like I hadn't really like done that, and it made me just kind of realize, how much time has passed and how much has changed. And we look like kids when we started this thing, and
Yeah.
just how different we are. And I don't know, yeah, it's given me an appreciation for what we've been able to do, and just how lucky we are, and all the support and love that we've gotten throughout the years. And so it's a pretty cool moment. It feels like this tour is going to be really special, and this year, all of it is going to be really special, and it means a lot to us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you touched on it before, like the first part of what's going to be like a trilogy of releases. I don't know if you're calling each of these 3 pieces albums or how you're referring to them, but I guess if it's an album, it's like album number 8 for you guys. So that's called Sweet, and that's about to drop. I mean, if people are listening on the day of this episode going live, it's coming out tomorrow. How are you feeling about getting this first batch out there of songs?
It's so exciting, especially because I feel really great about the music and about the songs. And it seems cool to, we've never done something as ambitious as this 3-part release. I guess, the way I look at it is that all 3 together will be our 8th album
Right.
once that is, once the whole collection has been released. And yeah, I'm so excited about it. I love that we're still finding things out about our band. The song that drops as kind of a single with a music video with the release is a song called Who's Laughing Now, which is us leaning into the pop punk side of our band in a way that we have never fully done before, and kind of embracing that, and something that I guess we've kind of been scared to do before and felt like no, that's not us, like we can't do that. But we did it for that song and it worked so well, and I love the energy of that song, and it's cool to like still be figuring things out like that after 20 years, like, oh, we can do this, and so I think there's a good amount of experimentation and kind of taking our band. By the way, I think is an example of a song that feels like something new and a step in a new direction, but works really well. And Yeah, it all feels great and it's so exciting. And we're self-releasing this music, which we've self-released some singles before, but never a full body of work like this. So it's just kind of like a lot of things all happening, and it all feels good.
Yeah, you kind of gone whole hog, haven't you? Because, like you said, you've self-released some singles. Never done an album before, but instead of going for one album, you're basically doing like a triple album of sorts. So yeah, just go hard or go home, I suppose.
Yeah, there was some hesitation on that within the band. It's tough to get everyone all excited and on the same page with everything. And there were some fears about, well, if we're going to self-release something, we're kind of tackling the biggest project that we could. But I think I like that about it. Yeah, it's very ambitious, and so far it has been working out really well. So hopefully we can keep it going.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, I'm just kind of interested as how to if the initial plan was just for like I guess your standard album that you've been doing in the past. At what point it then morphed into like a trilogy and how that kind of happened? Like, did you have like like a batch of like a lot of songs on in the bank that you had like a common thread between, or like how did that kind of
Yeah.
materialize?
Well, we were actually in the studio. It was about this time last year. We were in the studio recording this batch of songs, as well as the Remember Me cover that we did for the Disney compilation.
Yeah,
Um, and at the time, we were just going to be recording half of an album and then going in later in the year to finish up the album. But we ended up kind of, just we would spend so much time discussing all of this and how we should approach this. And once we kind of realized, like, hey, this is coming out on our 20-year anniversary as a band, that was when we started kind of just going like bigger picture, like what could we do to make this a more grand thing? And and then it just kind of came together. I think also part of it was we wanted to lock in the name of what we were going to call this album. And it's the three, I never know whether to say it or not. We've been kind of like teasing the names for part two and three. I think it has been like leaked, so I think that information is out there.
right.
But once we basically came up with the name, and it's three-word thing, then it was like, ooh, like that could be like the name for each part. And it was kind of like, when I feel like throughout that idea, it was like, no, that's crazy. Like you're crazy. And
Yeah.
but then eventually we all kind of had some time to marinate with it and think about it, and everyone just kind of felt good about it. So yeah, it all came together.
Right. So how have you like, and I know obviously you only want to give so much away. We know there's a trilogy, right? But there's the other parts are a bit more like in the shadows for the moment. But like, how can you tell me a bit more about the trilogy itself? Like how, like what's the kind of common thread, and when you've kind of split the songs up into these three like sections, I suppose, was there like I don't know, like a method to that? Like this part has this kind of songs because they have this common thread, and this section has these songs because it has that common thread. That how does that all piece together?
Yeah, there is a little bit of that. So basically, for the name of each release, we kind of tried to just lean into that, feeling basically, for each one. But I don't want to say that and get, have the expectation be that it's like a heavy kind of thing. I mean, because at the end of the day, it's like we're we're gonna come in with all of our song ideas and sort of, pick the best songs that we have, and So I think it's just kind of a little bit of that, leaning towards the emotion or the feeling of the title of each release. And we haven't recorded part three yet, so
Right.
it's kind of too early to say yet how that one's going to shape up. But I think to me, sort of the common thread between all of them so far, anyway, has been like nostalgia. Like to me, all of this music feels nostalgic to me. And I wonder if maybe that's because I don't think it was, intentionally. I don't think we intended to kind of set out and do that. But I think maybe it's just the us, hitting this 20-year mark and having done this for so long, and all of us probably, yeah, looking back and at our past and our beginning, and probably feeling nostalgic about all of this and this type of music, and emo having this kind of resurgence that it's having. And so I guess, yeah, if there is any sort of common thread in there, to me, that's it. But again, at the end of the day, it always is. Even if we kind of set out and try to go after a certain, theme or concept or whatever it is, it usually works out that we just, we pick the best songs that we feel like we have, and it kind of goes in that direction no matter what we try and do.
Right, right. I think what's good as well is like because you're kind of releasing these periodically, obviously you got the first part coming out, um, and then obviously I assume like the rest will come either later this year or maybe as far into the start of next year. And I guess every time you go on the road, you'll have these new songs to kind of shove into the set list to kind of keep things interesting for you guys because you've got such an extensive back catalog at this point where it's kind of like obviously you want to throw the bangers in there, but then once you've done that, there's a like little room for you to kind of wiggle around with some newer stuff or deep cuts and stuff like that. So I guess that will keep things on your toes as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think the way we've kind of planned it out makes a lot of sense for the rest of this year, and then next year. So like you said, we don't actually know yet how we're going to release
Yeah,
parts two and three, but I would assume it'll be somewhere about 6 months between each release. So that'll put us about a year from now, part three coming out. Um, and so that puts us kind of, we have a really busy year the rest of this year, and next year shaping up to be pretty busy as well. And so that's cool to, like, it has felt in the past sometimes like there's all of this build up for an album. You spend all of this time and effort and, energy and love going into recording this body of music, and then releasing it, and, touring, and then pretty quickly it can feel like that momentum has died off. So this to me is exciting because, throughout all of this touring and stuff, and this busy year that we have, and the busy year that we'll have next year, we'll have, singles coming out for the next one, and then the next one coming out, and then, and it kind of feels like hopefully there will be this excitement, and anticipation um, about all the things we're doing. I mean, that wraps up, next year as well. And then 2027 will be the 20-year Lesson in Romantic anniversary. Um, and so we'll be really busy, I assume, that whole year
yeah,
doing touring and whatever we're going to do. It's not really planned out, but I can only imagine it'll be a busy year for that. Um, so, the next 2 years, or almost 3 years, really, I guess, are pretty well sort of, planned out, and then we'll see what happens from there. But yeah.
that's crazy that you're already thinking like as far as 2027. Like,
Yeah, it is
yeah,
crazy, but I feel like it'll be here so quickly, and it feels nice to kind of have. But I don't think we ever really have had a plan that far out in advance before.
yeah.
And so, and who knows, things could pivot and things could change, and whatever. But it feels good for now to kind of have an idea of what it's all going to look like for the next,
Yeah.
two and a half, 3 years or so.
Yeah, I mean, before you know it, it'll be the 30th anniversary, and then you got to think about what you're gonna do with that.
I know it's such a weird thing, and I've thought about that for a while. How, artists like Jimmy Eat World, for example, and how they've got to the point where every couple years it's the 20-year or whatever, you know what I mean? Like it's just they can kind of do this cycle of, Clarity and Bleed America and Futures and Chase This Light and all of their kind of, bigger iconic albums. And then as soon as they get through the, 20-year of one, the 30-year of the, and it kind of just keeps leapfrogging like
Yeah.
that. It's I don't know how much they embrace all that and do all the anniversary tours and stuff, but it's there if they wanted to do it.
Yeah, yeah, and at least like even if you or Jimmy Eat World or whatever band doesn't celebrate it, the fans are probably going to celebrate it in some way themselves, aren't they?
Sure.
Because they'll know. So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But it's good that you like I guess another benefit of all these kind of songs and the way that you're releasing this trilogy is that you've kind of got more wiggle room to experiment and keep things fresh for you in terms of like the songs that you want to do. Like you said, you have that song where you go a bit more pop punk than you potentially have done for a very long time. And I guess that also goes to the fact that you are releasing things independently now, like not to talk bad on any labels, but I guess when it's just you independently as a band, it's kind of your decision, it's your freedom to do what you like and how you want to release music and how frequently and what the music sounds like and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of a high risk, high reward kind of situation. Because it is, yeah, it's amazing to have all of the control and the freedom to be able to do, we can release this however we want. It might have been difficult for us to convince a label partner to release music in this way, in this three-part release kind of thing. But, in this situation, we can do this however we want. And as long as it works well, then it's amazing. And if it doesn't, then it's on us. It's all on us. And but I feel like I kind of like that about it. Especially because it can start to feel comfortable. And after putting out 7 albums and feeling like you're just kind of doing the same things and you have these
Yeah.
patterns of how you do it, and so it's like, ooh, we're going to switch things up, we're going to try something new, and we don't know if it's going to work, but it's exciting.
Yeah, it's part of trying it out. Like you won't know until you try. And if it goes really well, maybe it's something that you revisit again in the future. I mean, I don't imagine you'll do another trilogy straight after this one. That's kind of excessive, but
Right, yeah.
it's something to consider, right?
But yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a great, learning process, and we'll kind of take all this and then see what to do next. Right. I would imagine we'll just do another album, next. But yeah, who knows? Maybe for the 30-year anniversary of the band or something, we'll
Yeah.
see how it all goes.
Yeah, go for a what's it? Not a trilogy, a quadrilogy for that one.
Might
Go one
have to.
step up.
Yeah, we got to
Yeah.
top it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So how have you personally been finding like the transition from being on a label to being independent? Because like, like you say, there's more risk involved. I guess like you guys are a bit more hands-on than on certain parts of that kind of behind the scenes work than you would be previously.
Yeah, for sure. It's tricky. I feel like, well, especially because, it had started to get to a point where the labels for the most part are kind of just bankrolling things. I mean, we've had great partnerships with all the labels we've been on. They've always been pretty open to us having, for the most part, full creative control and freedom. So it's really not all that different. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess, a lot of it was that before you'd have a label putting in all the funding, and if it doesn't do well, it's kind of more on them. So that's where a lot of like the risk, I guess, comes in. I should say though that we do have a partnership with Mini Hats. They're our
Yeah.
distribution, and they've done our distribution for the stuff we've self-released before, and um, they are kind of, handling some of the roles that a label would handle. So it is almost like a hybrid between like a full self-release and having a label partnership. And just kind of like, for full disclosure, I feel like I should mention that.
Yeah.
But it's good. I think that our best ideas are the ones that we come up with. I mean, you can have a label or a creative partner or whatever come up with these ideas of things that maybe we could do. But I feel like the ones that are going to work the best are when we're like, ooh, like this would be fun, or this would be, things that we kind of fully see the vision and embrace, and not like, oh, I guess we got to do this thing, and so as long as we have those creative ideas flowing, and that's where it's sometimes hit or miss, then I feel like it all works well. But it's tough, as you said. It's like we're not really used to being the ones fully in charge of kind of being responsible for creating all of the content and the marketing and whatever that goes into releasing music like this. So but I think we're getting a handle of it and trying to stay on top of it. And again, I feel like it has been working really well. And this tour is going to be the biggest headline tour we've ever done.
Right.
With the release coming out, it all feels like it's moving, and there's like momentum.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think what's also unique and pretty unheard of with you guys is the fact that you're still like the same lineup like 20 years later, which is like I say unheard of. Like, yeah, what do you think makes you as a band like so resilient to kind of maintain that? Whereas, like I say, it's not really something that happens so often nowadays.
Yeah, for sure. It's something that I am, one of the things I'm most proud of, really, with the band and our career, and something that I'm so grateful for. It's so strange for me to imagine if someone had left and we had some new person that didn't have all of the background and all of the experiences, that we've shared. It just seems like such a foreign concept to me, and sounds like it'd be really difficult. So, yeah, I'm incredibly grateful. I think a lot of it's that just, we grew up together in Tallahassee. I've known Brooks since I was 12, and I've known the rest of the guys since I was, 14, 15 years old. And there was just such an incredible local scene in Tallahassee, and this community of people that played music in different bands together and went to shows. And um, we all were such a part of that. And I feel like we all were kind of searching for the other people. Like once I met Brooks, it was like, okay, like, because that's what I had been, I started playing music when I was 10. I have an older brother who was in a band, and I just wanted that. I wanted to find friends who really wanted to play music as much as I did. And when I met Brooks, that was it. It was like we had that connection, and then we were always trying to find the other people to bring in that felt the same way about it and that really wanted to commit to doing this. And I think the other guys kind of felt that way as well about the bands that they were, because we were in many different bands.
Right.
Growing up, and then once we got together as Mayday Parade for the first time, and had the first band practice, and we wrote Three Cheers for 5 years, it was just like magic. It was like now, like, we'd been certain, I was 19 years old when we started, so for the last like 9 years I had been kind of yearning for that moment of everything just feeling locked in, and I think we all just really felt that when we started this thing. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. And also just, the fact that we all appreciate that we still get to do this. Life could have gone so many different ways, and we still get to create music and play music. And it's pretty hard to imagine a better life than that. So I think that's a lot of it. And then, just the logistical side of it is that, a lot of bands are structured in a way where there's one or two people who have more power and make more money than the rest of the bands. I mean, that's just kind of a reality of it. But we've never operated that way. It's always been a democracy where we vote on things, and that's just the way it goes. And we all have equal ownership of the band and the music. Even if I pretty fully write a song, it still becomes the five of ours. We own it equally. And because if it doesn't operate that way, it just inevitably is going to lead to problems and tension, and
Yeah.
members going, well, wait a second, like this guy's making so much more than me. And um, so I feel like, we're all equal in it, and that matters a whole lot. And um, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, if you could go back in time and speak to 19-year-old Derek, what do you think he would say? Of like, you'd say, oh yeah, in 20 years you're going to be celebrating the 20th anniversary of this band you're starting up right now.
I have no idea what I would say, but I know I would be so pumped about it. I mean, I definitely can't imagine that any of us expected that it would go this far. And in fact, we even, it's hard for me to know how much to spoil some things from the tour, but we
Right.
have these old interviews because we'll have like video walls and stuff for this tour,
Yeah.
and we're gonna play some clips from really early interviews. And there's one where Brooks is talking about, well, there's no way that I'm going to be doing this when I'm 40 years old. And we have that, playing on the video wall before we play a new song, because Brooks is 39 and he'll turn 40 in June. And so it's just like wild to, because I feel like we were like, there's no way we'll be doing this for this
Yeah.
long, for that long, but we just, but I know we just, I mean, at that point, we just wanted to be like a real band. Like I feel like that was my goal from the beginning, was to just be, we would go and see a lot of kind of like, I guess I'd say like mid-level, like not a lot of big touring acts came through Tallahassee, but there were a decent amount of, 500 to 700 cap venues. And you'd get bands like Anberlin and Copeland and May and Armor for Sleep and, shows like that.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to be a band kind of at that level that felt like, those bands to me seemed like that's the status of like a real band, not just like a local band, but now, that's something real. And that was kind of the only thing that was like where our goals were set at the beginning, was to make it to that level. And then there was no kind of comprehension of, well, then where do we go? What happens after that? That was just kind of off the radar, I guess. But yeah, I know 19-year-old me would be incredibly pumped for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you remember the moment when it kind of clicked for you, like, oh, wow, this hobby of mine, this passion of mine has now become my career, my livelihood?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say a moment where because felt that, but I think definitely, um, pretty early on, a lot of exciting things happened pretty quickly, honestly, for this band. We got signed to Fearless less than a year after we started, um, and then obviously recorded a lesson in romantics, and that was relatively successful. Within the first couple years of us starting this band, we had grown so much. And I remember us playing Bamboozle, a festival in New Jersey,
Yeah.
in I think this must have been 2007. And we weren't playing the main stage, we were playing one of the side stages. And we didn't step out and see the crowd or anything until we walked out on stage
Right.
to perform. And we all still talk about just how shocked we were that the amount of people. And it was basically, because they have kind of a tents, so there's like a space sort of set up, and pretty much the amount of space that could be filled completely was filled. And my guess
Wow.
would be around 5 or 6 thousand people or something like that, which isn't insane, but for us, it was by far the largest crowd we had played for. And just going like, what is happening? Like that
Yeah.
was a moment of all of us being like, whoa, like this is real. Like that's a lot of people that are coming to see us play right now. And there were several moments like that. But that one I think was definitely like the first time that I really felt like, okay, like this is something very real is happening. And there's no word for it. That's just such a magical thing, that excitement of having worked for a long time, especially if you include our previous bands and all the work we had put into that, kind of building up to that moment of like it's all happening, it's all paying off, and we're traveling the world, and we're going to places for the first time, and meeting people and experiencing things. It's the kind of thing that like you see in movies, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's just it's such a beautiful thing, and yeah, very grateful
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like, for so many years, leading up to obviously start Mayday Parade, and even like after, because you're still a fan of music, you're seeing these bands that you love, and at that moment, it's when you're stepping out and like, oh my God, like to these people, I'm like, we're that band to them, and I guess it's just kind of like how do you even start to comprehend that when you've got this sea of people right in front of you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's something that I've always been, like the bands that I looked up to the most when I was in high school, Taking Back Sunday and Newfound Glory, Saves the Day, Jimmy Eat World, all of that, to think that there were people that felt the same way that I felt about those bands toward our band is something that's always been just so humbling to me. And I definitely always have and still do. I feel some imposter syndrome where it's like, I don't know, like we're not as good as those guys. Like I don't know how people can feel that way, but at the end of the day, I just try to enjoy it, and do the best I can, and give back the most that I can to appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. And with your career being so long now, you've achieved so much as a band, and played in all these places, released so many albums. Is there anything else for you that's kind of on the bucket list that hasn't been ticked off yet for Mayday Parade that you would love to do, in the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely are those things, but none of it is like oh, like we have to, like this has to like if the band, God forbid, were to break up tomorrow, I think I would feel incredibly fulfilled and satisfied with what we've done, um but there's definitely places that we've played but never headlined, um that would be amazing, like Red Rocks, for example, in
Right.
Colorado is just such an iconic venue, um, that we've played but never headlined. But what's actually, there are some of those venues that we're doing on this tour that we've played many times. But the very first show of the tour is at Janus Live in Tampa. That I think the first time we played there was 2008, opening for All Time Low, or direct support for All Time Low. But we've never headlined there. So there's a handful of those venues that we'll get to experience that on this tour. And then there's definitely a lot of bands. I think the top one would be Jimmy Eat World. Jimmy Eat World's like my favorite band of all time,
Right.
and I feel like us touring together would work well. If we ever got to do a Jimmy Eat World tour, that's an absolute bucket list item for sure. But
Yeah,
not one
yeah.
that I expect to happen, but it would just be beautiful if it did.
You got to put out in the world, and that's the only way it's gonna happen, dude. So,
Yeah, yeah.
what's your favorite Jimmy Eat World album, if you had to pick one?
Clarity is my favorite. Clarity is not just my favorite Jimmy Eat World album, is my favorite album of all time.
Right.
And I know that, yeah, there's a lot of people that disagree and will go Futures or Bleed America, or whatever. Um, but yeah, yeah, Clarity is, well, I'm sure a lot of it is the nostalgia that I got into that album when I was in middle school. So I was probably about 13 years old or so, and was just so ahead of its time, you know and was so kind of like, before, like, it was emo, that more modern emo, but before you had Saves the Day and other bands kind of doing a similar thing. And it also just is so cool to me because that album, it feels like, especially if you listen to Static Prevails, the album before that is very different. And Clarity feels very much like Jimmy Eat World, kind of not knowing like who they are yet. Like once they did Bleed American, then it was like that feels like a like an established, like this is, and then from then on, it was kind of like, this is what we are, this is what we do. But Clarity feels like it's just kind of, you have all of the like sample stuff going on and like strings and like the xylophone and all the like drum loops and just like cool sounds. And there's just so much experimenting going on with that album, and just feels so ahead of its time. I love it so much.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know if they've ever done it before, but if they ever do like a full album playthrough of that, then I guess you'll be at the front row.
Oh, I would be there for sure. I've actually been lucky enough to years ago we played a show, gosh, I can't forget where, but somewhere in Virginia, I think. And we played like an earlier show, and then the late show at the same venue was Jimmy Eat World doing, it must have been the Futures 10-year anniversary where they played Futures front to back.
Right.
And we got to go to that show, and it was incredible. So I got to see that, which was amazing. But obviously, I'd love to see Clarity. They did do during the sort of COVID shutdown pandemic. They did a digital, like a an online show
Like a
of
live
playing
stream
Clarity
thing.
front to
Yeah.
back. Yeah, like a live stream of that. And so I did watch that, and that was incredible. We actually were all in the studio together at the time and sat in the control room and watched it and played it over the speakers, and was just a beautiful experience. But I would, yeah, hopefully one day I'll get to see it live.
Yeah, absolutely,
Oh,
dude.
and gosh, I forgot, I just got, when we were Young Fest in Vegas recently,
Yeah.
got to see them play Bleed American front to back. So I've gotten to see a couple, but yeah, hopefully I'll
Yeah.
get Clarity in there at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. Tick it off one day, hopefully. Um,
Yeah.
well, yeah, you mentioned obviously you're celebrating your 20th anniversary milestone with the Free Cheers for 20 Years tour.
Hmm.
So that's hitting North America across April, May, and June, Australia, Singapore, and the Philippines in September, and then you're doing When We Were Young in October, I believe. Um,
Yes.
how are you feeling about all that, celebrating, 20 years of the band on the road? Like, I'm sure there's many surprises on there that obviously you can't talk about right now, but yeah, obviously you know the secrets. Like, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling really good about it. Also, I feel like I feel really good, but I also probably think I feel the most pressure that I've ever felt, um, as far as like a live show. And I really, really want, and I'm sure the rest of the band, I can speak for all of us, really, really want this show to be the best show that we've ever put on. Um, and so the last, month and a half has been, pretty busy, spending so much time going into building this set and the transitions and the production and the video walls, the lighting, just all of it. And I feel really great about it, but I also I feel like the first show I'm gonna be pretty nervous.
Yeah,
Um, and then I think once we get the first show or two out of the way, then I think it's gonna be just like a huge relief. Like, okay, this all works. We're doing it. It's a great show. But in the meantime, there is this. It's also kind of just like a in general, getting ready to do a big tour and the days leading up to, like, am I doing all the things I need to be doing at home? It's a really weird thing, the transition from home to tour and from tour back to home, because it's like two completely different lives.
right.
My life at home is so drastically different from my life on tour, and you just kind of go directly from one, you jump into the other, and there's always this kind of period of like settling in and things feeling normal, and then eventually it does feel normal, and then you switch back to the other, and there's kind of this anxiousness that's there. So that's kind of there in general, but then I think on top of that, just, yeah, the pressure of this being such a big tour, and is weighing on me a little bit. But there's also a ton of excitement. I'm so excited to do it, and the fact that the tour is selling really well. I think like 10 or 12 of the shows are sold out, and I think most of the shows will sell out, and that's so affirming. We're going to some bigger rooms, and we were kind of nervous, had some hesitations, but it all seems like it's working out really well. And I know the shows are going to be incredible. Microwave and Grayscale and Like Roses are all really, really solid bands and really good people. So I'm excited to be on the road with them. And it all feels really, really good.
Yeah. Well, I'm confident it's all going to go really well, dude. Like, after the first couple of shows, like once the jitters are out of the way, it'll all be smooth sailing from there.
Yeah.
Have you got any other plans for 2025? Obviously, you've got this huge tour that's going on, and the potential of the second part, and maybe even the at least teasing the third part of this kind of trilogy. Like, what else is in the pipeline?
Yeah, it's a pretty busy year. Not too long after we finish this tour, we're going to go into the studio to record the third part for the release. And then we have the Australia, Southeast Asia stuff. And then there is another fall tour planned that I can't speak about yet because it's not announced. We have a handful of festivals that we're doing. So we're pretty busy up until like December, and then even next year, the early part of the year, we have our touring kind of planned out. So it's going to be pretty go for a while, which is it's good and bad. It's great because I mean it means that things are happening, and it's good to be busy and working, and it means the band is doing well, and but it's tough, especially the older we get doing this, and I have kids, some of the guys have kids. It's tough to leave for 6 weeks at a time or
Yeah.
however long. But at the end of the day, I think we just appreciate the fact that we won't be able to do this forever, and so may as well make the most of it while we can.
Yeah, that's the way to go forward, man. Yeah, well, thank you so much for your time, Derek. Really appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy, so I'll let you go now. Any final words before I let you go, and enjoy the rest of your day?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. And I guess just yeah, again, it's hard to put into words how grateful we are and how grateful I am that this is my life, and I think we're all feeling it uh, more than ever, just because of this landmark of the 20 years and everything that's happening. And we realize that there's a ton of support and love that we've received, that has really carried us through all of this, and so it means so much, and we're very grateful. So thanks to anyone who has listened to us or come to a show or bought a t-shirt or an album or whatever. It all means a whole lot to us.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks, Derek. Really appreciate it. Best of luck with everything. I'm sure it'll go well. I'll keep an eye out for any UK dates, and yeah, hopefully see you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Awesome, dude. Take care of yourself.
Yeah, you too.
Bye. And that's it. Thanks so much for tuning in to It's Not a Phase. If you enjoyed this episode, then don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Leave a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. Follow the podcast on social media, and maybe even join the Patreon or grab some merch from the store. You can find everything that you need at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. Thanks again. Hopefully catch you on the next one. And remember, it's not a phase, it's a lifestyle.